Hey guys, tonight we're saddling up for something you didn't know you needed to fear, galloping through the vast, wind-scraped steppe as a Mongol postal rider. The stars hang low and sharp overhead, like scattered teeth ready to bite, and the cold bites harder. You can't stop, you can't slow down. Somewhere far ahead, your next horse waits, and maybe shelter, maybe not. But it's not the wolves, the bandits, or even the endless, bone-chilling wind you have to worry about. No. The real danger is forgetting to bow at the wrong time or handing over a message the wrong way. Miss a rule, and you might not survive the night, but not for the reason you think. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I'm genuinely curious how far this little caravan of ours stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift in the saddle, the leather creaking under you like an old man's knees. Your horse, small, shaggy, and full of stubborn energy, trots onward without much urging. It knows the route better than you do. You're part of the YAM, the sprawling relay network that Genghis Khan himself decreed would bind his empire together tighter than any army could. And here's the first rule of YAM life: etiquette is survival. You pull your cloak tighter, the smell of horse sweat and leather mixing with the dry, dusty air. Mongol riders aren't just wild nomads galloping around willy-nilly, they have rules, lots of rules. Tiny rituals embedded in every moment of the ride, most of them older than the empire itself. You're expected to bow, not just to people, but to horses, yurts, and even the relay stations that dot the empire like secret oases. And heaven help you if you do it wrong. You learned that the first time you showed up to a station and dismounted without a formal bow to the station master. The look he gave you, somewhere between outrage and pity, was burned into your brain long before the punishment followed. Historians still argue whether the Mongol postal system was the most disciplined courier service in history or just the most superstitious. You, on the other hand, are certain it's both. Tonight is one of the colder rides. The wind slices across the open plain, tugging at your cloak and biting into your cheeks. Your destination? Another relay station about 30 miles ahead. Close enough, you think, if you don't lose too much time. You adjust your grip on the leather pouch tied securely at your waist. The dispatch you're carrying could be an order for a siege or a treaty with a foreign king. Doesn't matter. You're not allowed to peek. You're not even supposed to think about it too much. In the distance, a low hill breaks the flatness of the steppe, crowned with a huddle of dark shapes. Not trees. No. Trees are rare out here. Those are yurts, tents that look like giant, lumpy buttons sewn onto the earth. As you approach, you squint to make out the standard fluttering over the central yurt. Good. It's the right place. But you can't just barge in, waving your scroll around like some two-bit merchant. No. You slow your horse to a walk, straighten your back despite the cold, and perform the first of the formalities, the distance bow. It's a delicate maneuver. Lean forward, angle your head just enough, and raise your right hand in a loose, almost lazy arc across your chest. You don't want to look desperate. Mongols respect speed but despise panic. You're offering respect, not begging for shelter. The station master steps out from the largest yurt, arms folded. His robes are dusty but clean, an important distinction. Mongol riders and officials didn't have the luxury of soap, but they kept up appearances. Dust is fine. Mud, blood, or sweat stains? An embarrassment. A quiet insult to the spirits of the road. Your horse flicks its ears but stands still. Good boy. You repeat the bow once closer, this time dismounting with a flourish that you've practiced in your sleep. Right foot over, slide down, knees bent slightly, no stumbling. The trick is to look like the ground came up to meet you, not the other way around. The station master gives a barely perceptible nod. Success. You haven't offended anyone yet. A small miracle. He gestures, and two younger boys come running from behind the yurt to take your horse. Before they lead it away, you step forward, place a hand on its flank, and whisper a short blessing, another part of the ritual. Mongol horses were considered partners, almost extensions of yourself. Mistreat one, and you might as well be asking for a curse. You hand off the pouch next, using both hands, fingers outstretched, not gripping it, but cradling it, offering it like a gift to a temperamental god. The station master takes it with the same formality, and for a moment, the world pauses. This little ceremony, this dance of bows and hand gestures, might seem ridiculous to outsiders. But in the Mongol Empire, where the distance between life and death was measured in the thickness of a horsehair, these rituals mattered. They weren't just etiquette, they were armor. You're invited inside, barely a tilt of the station master's head, but it's enough. You duck through the felt flap of the yurt, and a wave of warm, smoky air wraps around you. The station smells of mutton stew, old leather, and wood smoke, a cocktail that's either comforting or revolting depending on how long you've been on the road. Inside, there's a fire pit, a few cushions, and a low table stacked with bowls of fermented mare's milk, arag, and dried curds. You suppress a grimace. Arag is an acquired taste, and even after months on the road, you haven't really acquired it. But refusing would be the ultimate rudeness. You accept the bowl with a deep nod, sip politely, and manage not to gag. Another small miracle. As you settle down, warming your hands near the fire, you allow yourself a tiny, fleeting smile. One more leg of the journey survived, not just the physical distance, but the gauntlet of invisible, unspoken rules that bind every rider, every horse, and every piece of parchment to the heart of the empire. The night stretches out ahead, and with it, the endless road and its endless rituals. You don't linger long. Mongol postal riders aren't supposed to. Rest is a privilege, not a right, and tonight the road feels particularly greedy. The station master, still solemn as a stone, gestures toward the next step in the journey. You know what's coming, it's time to swap horses. Not just a handoff but a whole process steeped in formalities. Outside the yurt, the stable boys have brought out a new mount. She's leaner than your last horse, with a coat the color of burnt wheat and eyes that seem to size you up like a merchant inspecting spoiled fruit. You offer another bow, not to the boys, not even to the station master this time, but to the horse. Yes, you heard that right. In the Mongolian system, every horse you ride is owed a greeting. Historians still argue whether this ritual was a relic of shamanistic animal reverence or just a practical way of ensuring riders approached mounts calmly. Either way, if you skipped it, you risked not only bad luck but also an angry, bucking beast between your legs. And out here, falling from the saddle could mean breaking bones, or worse, breaking a dispatch route. No pressure. You step closer, hands low and open, murmuring a few choice words under your breath. Good girl. Strong legs. Swift hooves. Praise was customary. You didn't have to mean it, but you really had to say it. The horse snorts once, as if unimpressed, but doesn't shy away. Small victories. One of the stable boys hands you a strip of dried meat, a little crumpled but still potent with salty, smoky flavor. Riders are expected to eat on the move, and this is your fuel for the next 30-mile stretch. Mongols believed in efficiency but also ceremony. You can't just jam food into your mouth like a starving wolf. No, there's a right way to eat even a piece of jerky while thundering over the plains. You mount in one smooth motion, careful not to tug the reins too harshly or clench your legs too tightly. Mongol saddles are stiff, wooden things, high-backed and narrow, built for speed, not comfort. Once settled, you raise the meat to your mouth and take a precise bite, careful to chew slowly. This isn't just politeness, it's practical too. Choke while galloping, and you might end up a meal for the vultures. The relay station dwindles behind you, a shrinking blotch of light against the vast blackness. The stars are your map now. Mongol riders didn't carry compasses, they learned the constellations and followed river bends, distant mountains, even the way the grass bent in the wind. Tonight, you aim for the crooked arm of the Milky Way, dragging your weary body toward the next post. Your mind drifts as your horse falls into a smooth canter. You think about how this Holium system came to be, how Genghis Khan, the man who could barely write his own name, understood that information was power long before the rest of the world caught up. He ordered the construction of these relay stations every 25 to 30 miles, stocked with horses and supplies, manned by station masters who doubled as innkeepers, quartermasters, and occasional executioners. And if you think they skimped on security, think again. Every station was protected not just by soldiers but also by layers of etiquette so thick, you could practically trip over them. Violating the rituals wasn't just embarrassing, it could brand you as a troublemaker, or worse, a threat to the Khan's authority. There's a debate among historians whether the yam was purely a logistical marvel or something more, an empire-wide lesson in behavioral control. Was it just about getting messages from A to B faster than anyone else in the world? Or was it a psychological trick, drilling loyalty into every rider, every station master, every horse with a web of invisible, unquestioned rules? Your horse snorts, jerking you back to the present. You rub her neck absently, feeling the powerful muscles working under the skin. She's fast, this one. You'll make good time if you keep the pace steady. Ahead, the horizon glimmers faintly. Another station? You squint, but it's too early for that. No, this is something else. A cluster of yurts, maybe a traveling band or a temporary encampment. You know the drill. Even though they're not part of the YAM, you still have to observe the basics of Mongol courtesy when passing strangers. Especially strangers. You ease your horse down to a trot as you approach. The figures around the yurts pause, watching. Silence stretches thick between you. Without breaking stride, you execute another bow, this one a little shallower but still respectful. Right hand open, tilt at the waist, no sudden movements. You're a courier, not a threat. The strangers watch for a beat longer, then one of them raises a hand in reply, no bow, but a neutral gesture that says, you may pass. Relieved, you click your tongue, urging the horse forward. Mongols were famously tolerant of many things, different religions, different languages, but rudeness could get you gutted before you finished your bad joke. And Mongol jokes, by the way, were terrible. Historians still argue about whether the supposed Mongol tradition of insult duels was real or just a medieval chronicler's fever dream. The yurts disappear behind you, swallowed by darkness, and the steppe stretches out again, endless and empty. Your only company is the steady beat of hooves and the occasional yip of a distant fox. Time stretches. You lose track of it somewhere between chewing another strip of jerky and adjusting your cloak to block the worst of the wind. The road ahead is just a smudge of moonlight on grass. Finally, just as your legs start to cramp and your horse's breathing grows ragged, you spot it, the next station. Another cluster of yurts, this time ringed by a flimsy wooden fence and a few tethered horses grazing near a frozen creek. You straighten in the saddle, brush the dust from your cloak, and prepare yourself. Another bow. Another ritual. Another dance with the old spirits of the steppe. Because out here, riding fast wasn't enough. You had to ride properly. You slow your horse again, feeling the way she shifts her weight beneath you, almost sighing in relief. She knows the drill too. You reach down and pat her neck, gently, 3 times. Another custom. 3 pats when approaching a station, no more, no less. Any Mongol courier worth his salt knew this small gesture was a polite signal to those watching, I come in peace, and I bring the speed of the Khan. As you approach, a figure steps from the largest yurt. Station master again. Older, heavier, wrapped in thick felt robes dyed a smoky gray. In the flickering torchlight, he looks more shadow than man. You ease your horse to a stop, slide from the saddle, and bow deeply, head lower this time, hand over heart. Every station had its own slight twist on the formality, and you'd picked up the habit of observing the variations. It was good manners, yes, but it was also survival. Do it wrong, and you'd be remembered in ways you wouldn't enjoy. The station master raises a hand in reply, palm outward, a blessing for the road and the rider. The couriers call it the wind's favor, a silent wish for safe travels. Practical? Maybe. Symbolic? Absolutely. Mongols weren't just warriors and messengers, they were believers in unseen forces that lived in the grasses, the rivers, the very wind. Historians still argue whether these greetings were rooted in pre-imperial traditions or were crafted deliberately by the Khan's advisors to instill uniformity. You, standing here with your horse's sweat drying on your face and your joints stiffening from the cold, couldn't care less. Rituals like this stitched the endless, borderless empire together tighter than any army ever could. The station master steps aside and gestures to a young woman, her face hidden behind a hood trimmed with fox fur. She leads your horse away and, without being asked, brings forward another mount. You can tell just by the way this new horse stands, square, unflinching, that it's been trained for distance. Mongol horses weren't the tallest or fastest, but they could run longer and survive on less than any breed you've ever known. Before mounting, you kneel, yes, kneel, and place one hand on the frozen earth. It's an old courtesy, called greeting the land. Riders were taught to acknowledge the spirits not just of the living, but of the steppe itself. A small handful of earth is taken, pressed lightly against your forehead, then returned to the ground. You perform the gesture quickly but deliberately, feeling the cool grit against your skin. Only then do you mount the new horse, careful again to avoid any abrupt movements. Horses can sense impatience or disrespect, and a nervous horse could cost you hours you don't have. The station master offers a bowl. You don't hesitate, even though you can already guess what's inside. Ereg. Fermented mare's milk. The smell alone could knock over a mule, but the drink was considered a blessing and a duty to accept. It would be the height of discourtesy to refuse. Worse than that, it would brand you as an outsider, a man who didn't respect the old ways. You take a sip, keeping your face as blank as possible while your throat protests. The taste is sour, sharp, almost fizzy. Like someone left yogurt out in the sun for too long and then decided it needed to have a kick. Another sip. Another swallow. You hand the bowl back with a nod. The station master's face doesn't change, but you think, hope. You see a glimmer of approval in his eyes. You tug your cloak tighter, settle back into the saddle, and prepare to leave. But before you do, the station master says something low, almost inaudible. You blink, caught off guard. Mongol Postal station masters were usually silent unless there was urgent news. When he speaks again, you catch the word, kaimori. Wind horse. It's an old blessing, one whispered only to riders bound on journeys of particular importance, or danger. A wind horse blessing wasn't just a wish for speed, it was a wish for the strength of your soul to ride free with the wind. You bow once more, deeper this time, grateful but cautious. Blessings could be two-edged swords. Sometimes they were offered because danger lay ahead. And sometimes, just sometimes, they were warnings dressed up as kindness. You nudge your new horse forward. As you ride away, you resist the urge to look back. Mongol etiquette frowned on that too. Always ride forward. Always focus on the path ahead. Looking back was bad luck, and worse, bad manners. The wind picks up, hissing across the plains, cold and sharp. The stars will overhead in their endless, indifferent dance. You keep your eyes forward and your mind focused, letting the rhythm of the horse's hooves lull you into the peculiar half-trance that riders slip into during long stretches of road. Your fingers brush the pouch tied securely at your side. The message inside feels heavier than before, as if it had absorbed the weight of the station master's silent warning. The YM system thrived on this blend of pragmatism and superstition. Messages traveled faster across the Mongol Empire than anywhere else in the world, but they didn't move on speed alone. They moved on belief. Belief in the rituals. Belief in the order. Belief that a rider who showed proper respect to horse, earth, and man would be carried swiftly and safely across the steppe. You spur your horse into a gallop, the ground rushing by in a blur of dry grass and moonlit shadows. Behind you, the station fades into darkness, and ahead, the road stretches on, long, unbroken, and bound together by etiquette older than memory. The wind hisses louder now, full of tiny ice knives that slice against your cheeks and nose. You tug your head lower and lean forward into the horse's neck, feeling the heat rising from her coat. She's a good one, sure-footed, quick, and not one to spook easily. The kind of horse the Mongolian system prized above all else, strong enough to gallop for hours, smart enough not to kill herself doing it. As you ride, you adjust your tunic, brushing dust and stray horse hairs from the fabric. Mongol riders had a particular dress code, not in the embroidered silks of Chinese courtiers or the shining armor of European knights, but in functional, standardized layers built for endurance and respectability. Sheepskin-lined boots, wide leather belts adorned with simple metal studs, long coats called deal with high collars to shield against the biting winds. Every layer had a purpose, every accessory a meaning. Historians still debate whether the Mongol courier uniform was intentionally designed to intimidate or simply evolved from centuries of surviving the worst nature could throw at them. Either way, you feel the weight of it now, the deal heavy but warm, the thick belt cinching your waist like an anchor against the shifting wind. And, of course, everything had to be neat. Dirt was fine, mud was fine. Blood, curiously, was fine too. But stains, old, crusted, discolored blotches, were an insult to the spirits of travel. They showed disrespect to the road, to the horse, and to the invisible web of connections that tied the empire together. It wasn't just bad manners, it was bad luck. You remember an old story whispered by veteran riders around a station fire, the tale of a courier who wore a torn, filthy deal to an important delivery. He made the handoff to a local governor without the proper respect and without even cleaning his boots. By dawn, the man was found dead, trampled by his own horse, no one willing to touch the body until a shaman was called to purify the site. True? Maybe. Exaggerated? Probably. Still, you don't dare test the legend. Your own boots are caked with fresh dirt but not yet cracked or soaked through. You'd stopped at the last station to rewrap your feet, another little ritual that riders did half out of comfort, half out of superstition. Blisters were bad luck. If you ignored them, it was said you carry not just pain, but failure, from one station to the next. And speaking of rituals, here's another tricky bit: greetings on horseback. As you crest a small rise, you see a figure approaching in the distance. Another rider, traveling fast and low against the horizon. You'll pass each other soon, and that means it's time to show you remember your manners. You slow your pace just slightly, not too much, and bring your horse to a steady canter. The other rider mirrors you. At a distance of about 20 yards, you lean forward just enough to shift your weight, raise your right hand with fingers splayed, and lower your head. The other rider does the same. No words. No shouting across the wind. Just the silent dance of acknowledgement. I see you. I respect you. I will not interfere with your road. Historians argue whether this etiquette was a relic of ancient tribal customs or a practical necessity born from the need to avoid misunderstandings between armed, nervous men on fast horses. Either way, it's second nature now. Miss the signal, and you might find yourself pursued, or worse, mistaken for a bandit. The rider passes by, his own cloak snapping in the wind, his face half hidden under the deep hood of his deal. You don't look back. Never look back. You chew another strip of dried meat, careful not to gobble it. The proper way to eat on horseback was to tear off small bites, chew slowly, and never, ever drop a scrap. Dropping food was a great insult to the Earth Mother, who, according to old belief, lent the step to humans under the condition that they not abuse it. Drop a crumb and fail to pick it up, and you'd be marked by spirits no shaman could cleanse. Besides, dried meat was precious. A Mongol rider could survive on a handful of meat and fermented curds for days, thanks to the tough constitution that steppe life built into every sinew and bone. This wasn't luxury riding. This was survival dressed up in a cloak of ceremony. Your horse's ears twitch forward. She senses something. You follow her gaze and spot it, a thin trail of smoke curling up from a distant campfire. Not a relay station this time, but a traveling merchant camp. You can't avoid it, the road skirts too close. Another etiquette test. You guide your horse carefully, slowing to a controlled trot as you near the camp. Figures gather near the fire, bundled against the night, and you make out a few long, low wagons. Silk traders, maybe. Or fur merchants returning from the cities. Either way, they're not Yam affiliated, so the greeting must be more formal. You bow deeply from the saddle, one hand raised, palm out, an older, broader gesture than the one you used with the other rider. It signals peaceful passage and acknowledgement of the stranger's right to the land they occupy, even temporarily. One of the merchants, an older man with a beard like a frost-covered broom, raises his own hand and nods. The rest go back to their fire, and you press onward, your horse's hooves muffled against the frozen ground. You think back to the training you underwent before your first gym mission. Endless hours drilling bows, gestures, the careful tilt of the head, the precise angle of the hand. It felt ridiculous then, all that pomp and posturing. You were young. You thought speed was the only thing that mattered. You know better now. Speed gets you there. Manners keep you alive. The horizon shifts as you ride, and the ground rises slightly, a ripple in the otherwise flat sea of the steppe. Somewhere beyond that rise, another station waits. Another horse. Another bowl of arag you'll have to choke down without flinching. And countless invisible rules, clinging to you like dust on your cloak, pushing you forward one carefully measured breath at a time. The stars overhead burn brighter as the night deepens, the sky so clear you can almost hear the constellations whisper. You don't have the luxury to listen, though, not when your next encounter requires a bow without breaking stride. This is one of the Yam's more acrobatic formalities, the rider's bow. You hear it before you see it, the low thrum of hooves, fast and steady, beating the earth like a distant drum. Another courier. His silhouette resolves against the horizon, just a darker shadow against the darker night. You and he are about to pass at full gallop, and you know the stakes. To fail in this, whether through poor posture or hesitation, is to risk not just embarrassment, but suspicion. After all, if you can't trust someone to manage the etiquette of a simple passing bow, how can you trust them not to be carrying false orders or stolen dispatches? The secret lies in your core, in your balance. You rise slightly in the stirrups, shift your weight forward so you're hovering just above the saddle, knees flex like springs. Your horse, well-trained and used to this ritual, adjusts her gait just enough to stay smooth beneath you. As the other rider closes in, you time it perfectly. One hand leaves the reins, briefly, dangerously, and sweeps in a shallow arc across your chest while your head dips low but not so low that you lose sight of the rider. The other courier mirrors you, your movements almost a reflection of each other. For a split second, you are two shadows nodding in the moonlight, mutual respect flashing between you like a spark. And then he's gone, swallowed back into the darkness behind you. Historians still argue whether this practice evolved purely for courtesy or whether it served a tactical purpose, keeping riders alert, sharpening their reflexes. After all, in a world where messages were more valuable than gold, a rider had to be skilled in every sense, fast, respectful, and ready to defend themselves at a moment's notice. You settle back into the saddle, grinning despite yourself, pulling off a full-speed bell without dropping the reins or wobbling in the stirrups. Now that's something that gets a nod around a station fire. It's the steps version of sticking the landing. Your horse tosses her head as if sensing your satisfaction. Good girl. The night around you grows colder, heavier, the kind of cold that soaks into your bones and makes the leather of your boots creak with every flex of your toes. You know better than to stop and adjust them. Stopping is for the weak, or the dead. You scan the horizon, searching for the next sign of human life. Relay stations were placed strategically, but Mongol cartography wasn't big on road signs. Instead, you look for smoke, for the way the grass is worn down by countless hooves, for the faint glimmer of light against the low clouds. Your stomach growls. The dried meat you nibbled earlier sits like a stone in your gut, and your mouth is dry despite the chill. You think about water, the universal constant in a courier's life. Mongol postal riders developed a language around water, a whole set of gestures and phrases that made asking for it a formal affair. Water was life, but it was also property, and on the steppe, nothing could get you killed faster than acting entitled to someone else's well or stream. You recall the ritual. First, you dismount. Always dismount. Approaching a yurt or camp on horseback to ask for water was tantamount to declaring yourself a raider. Then you remove your gloves, exposing your bare hands, a sign that you carry no weapon. Kneeling is optional but recommended. A lower posture puts people at ease. When you speak, you use a high, formal tone, using ji, I beg water. The words are humble, deliberate, carefully distanced from the gruff demands a bandit might bark out. And when the water is given, and it usually is, even to strangers, you bow again before accepting it, touching the vessel briefly to your forehead before drinking. And if water is refused, well, Mongol etiquette allows for that, too. You accept the denial with a bow just as deep, thank the giver as if you'd been gifted a king's ransom, and ride on. To show anger would be to mark yourself as a brute, someone unfit for the road. And in a land where the Yem network stretched thousands of miles, reputation was a form of currency. Your horse slows slightly, nostrils flaring, ears pricked forward. She smells something. You catch it a moment later, the faint, metallic tang of wood smoke. There's a relay station close. You nudge her gently, and she surges forward, as eager as you are to get out of the cold. As you crest the next low hill, the station comes into view, for yurts clustered around a stone-lined fire pit, their walls bulging slightly under the weight of heavy woolen felt. Horses stand tethered nearby, heads drooping, steam rising from their flanks. This is one of the smaller stations, but that doesn't mean the etiquette is any less rigorous. You perform the now familiar sequence, slow your horse to a walk, straighten your back, and bow at a distance. A man steps forward from the central yurt, and you recognize him immediately, not by face, but by bearing. The slight tilt of the chin, the way his hands rest on the sash at his waist, he's the station master. You dismount smoothly, your knees protesting slightly. The station master inclines his head, and you return the gesture. No words are exchanged yet. Words will come later, after the proper formalities are observed. Two boys hurry forward to take your horse, and you murmur a blessing to her before they lead her away. You wonder briefly if she'll be reassigned to another rider soon. Horses in the Yam didn't have permanent riders. They served whoever needed them next, a living reminder that in the Mongol system, individuals mattered less than the mission. The station master extends a hand, and you offer the pouch, both hands cradling it as if it's made of glass. He takes it with a grave nod, then steps aside to allow you into the central yurt. Inside, the heat hits you like a hammer, almost too hot after the freezing ride. You blink, adjusting to the dim, smoky interior. Another bowl of arag is pressed into your hands. You sigh inwardly but accept it, bowing slightly as you bring it to your lips. You sip. You swallow. You survive. Another ritual completed. Another night conquered. The fire crackles, the shadows dance, and outside, the wind howls against the felt walls. You pull your cloak tighter and let yourself relax, just for a moment. The road waits. It always waits. You don't stay long, no rider does. The fire is warm, the arag is thick in your gut, and the idea of curling up against the yurt's felt walls is tempting. But the etiquette of the yam is clear. Riders are to move as soon as they are able. Speed is loyalty, and loyalty is life. Outside, the station master has already prepared your next horse. She's smaller than the last, stockier, with a coat the color of storm clouds and legs like tree trunks. Built not for grace but for endurance. You approve silently. The station master gives a sharp nod, his version of a blessing, and you respond in kind. No words still. Just gestures, the ancient choreography of the steppe. You approach the new horse slowly, carefully. First the bow, deep and formal. Then, the soft words, strong heart, fast hooves, keen eyes. Mongol riders didn't just respect their horses, they courted them. Introductions were mandatory. Ignore the greeting, and you risked upsetting the horse, and the spirits said an offended horse could carry misfortune as easily as it carried you. You lay a hand lightly on her neck. She flinches but settles quickly. Another small victory. You mount up, checking the saddle straps and reins, making sure everything's tied tight. Mongol saddles are different, high in the front and back, designed to keep you secure during the long, hard rides. But they don't forgive mistakes. A poorly tied girth strap could mean an embarrassing tumble, and in Mongol etiquette, public clumsiness was a stain you were longer than a wine spill on silk. With a cluck of your tongue, you're off again, hooves thudding against the frozen ground. The moon has shifted by the time you find yourself nearing the edge of a new territory. Invisible borders crisscross the steppe, tribal lands, old clan territories, regions overseen by different station masters. Crossing them means observing yet another layer of etiquette. You slow to a walk, guiding your horse carefully as you approach a marker stone. It's small and rough, half buried in the grass, but unmistakable, a sign that you're entering a new domain. Mongol tradition demands a bow here too, this time to the land itself. You swing one leg over, dismount, and kneel, pressing your palm to the earth. It's not just superstition. It's an announcement, a polite tap-tap at the invisible door. I am a guest here. I come with respect. Historians still argue whether these rites of passage were official policy or old traditions that the Yam simply formalized. You don't bother with the debate. You know only that a rider who didn't show proper deference in foreign territory might find himself disappeared somewhere between stations, the only trace left being his abandoned saddle and a puzzled horse. You remount, shifting in the saddle as your legs protest. Riding for hours does that to you, the numbness in the knees, the slow burn in the lower back. Mongol riders were trained to endure, to become part of the horse, moving as one creature. It sounds romantic until you've ridden 100 miles without sleep, muscles locking up like rusted gears. The wind shifts, carrying with it a smell that makes you sit up straighter, smoke. But this is different. Not the gentle wood smoke of a yurt fire, but something sharper, darker. A raid? Bandits? Your horse senses it too, ears flicking, nostrils flaring. You murmur reassurance, stroking her neck, and keep moving, cautious but steady. The steppe is full of dangers, and not all of them are visible. Mongol postal riders developed a kind of sixth sense, a way of reading the land like a living map. You scan the horizon, looking for signs of trouble, fluttering banners, trampled grass, distant movement. Nothing yet. Still, you slow your pace. Better to be polite, better to observe every rule twice over when uncertainty hangs in the air. When you spot the encampment, it's smaller than you expected, just a cluster of yurts, no more than half a dozen. Likely a family caravan or a minor noble's household on the move. But the protocols remain the same. You steer your horse wide, giving the camp a broad berth, and perform the rider's bow, one hand across your chest, head dipping low without breaking stride. A figure near the fire responds with a raised hand, palm outward. Neutral. Permission to pass. You exhale slowly, tension bleeding out of your shoulders. Not every encounter goes so smoothly. You've heard tales of riders who forgot a bow, who cut too close to a camp or failed to announce themselves properly. Some were merely fined, forced to surrender their horses or dispatches in penance. Others, well, the steppe has its own quiet justice. As you ride on, you think about how etiquette on the yam wasn't just about courtesy. It was about safety. About showing that you weren't a threat, that you respected the unwritten codes that held this sprawling empire together. Genghis Khan had built the yam not just with horses and roads, but with manners, sharp, precise, and unyielding as a drawn bowstring. You glance at the horizon, where the stars seem to blur into the land. Another station waits ahead. Another horse, another bowl of arag, another ritual. You shift in the saddle, feeling the ache in your spine, and smile grimly. No one said the road would be easy. But at least, if you mind your manners, it might be survivable. The horizon never seems to change. One moment blurs into the next, endless steppe, endless stars, endless hoofbeats drumming against the frozen ground. Still, your mind sharpens as you ride because soon, maybe very soon, you'll arrive at the next relay, and with it, the exchange of something even more important than horses, the message. Messages on the yam are sacred. Not in the way a priest guards a holy relic, but in the way a soldier guards his sword. Lose it, and you lose more than your reputation, you lose your place in the great machinery of the empire. You pat the leather pouch secured at your side, feeling the reassuring weight of the dispatch. Mongol riders are taught from the start, your life is second to the message. The message rides first. If a river floods, you swim it. If bandits attack, you outrun or outwit them. If a wheel breaks or a horse collapses, you find another. But if the message is lost, there is no forgiveness, only ritual humiliation, or worse. Historians still argue whether the Mongols punished failed couriers with public beatings or simply cast them out in disgrace. There are tales, half-whispered by station fires, of riders forced to sit in silence outside the Great Khan's encampment, stripped of their belts, shoes, and dignity, a living warning to others. Whether true or embroidered by fearful tongues, the stories are enough to make you grip the pouch a little tighter. Up ahead, faint against the low line of the land, you see the silhouettes of yurts and the flicker of a fire. Another relay station. Your horse, sensing the end of her run, perks up, her trot turning into a brisk canter. You let her, adjusting your posture and preparing for another exchange of bows and blessings. As you approach, the familiar routine unfolds. Slow to a trot. Sit tall. Bow at a distance. You dismount with practiced ease, feet finding the frozen earth with a crunch. The station master stands waiting, his face impassive but his posture alert. A good one, you think. The kind who doesn't miss much. You reach for the pouch, but not in haste. Everything must be done with deliberation. You cradle the pouch in both hands, arms extended. No clutching, no jerking. You are not handing over a bag, you are offering a piece of the Empire's beating heart. The station master accepts it with a mirrored gesture. For a brief moment, your hands touch, leather brushing against leather, and then the burden is his. You bow again, deeper this time, a show of gratitude for the unspoken trust being transferred. And that's another thing Mongol riders are trained to respect, trust. Out here, where the nearest help might be days away and the wrong move can spiral into disaster, trust is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Inside the yurt, another bowl of arag waits. Of course it does. You take it, sip dutifully, and, mercifully, it's less sour than usual. Someone here knows how to ferment properly. Small blessings. You drain the bowl, wiping your mouth on your sleeve with careful nonchalance. The station master says something low, something only a fellow rider would catch, riders on the road behind. You nod in thanks, understanding the unspoken warning. More couriers, or something else? It's not clear. Either way, you'd best be quick. Outside again, a fresh horse awaits. Chestnut brown, wide-chested, a glint of stubbornness in its eye. You approach slowly, repeating the formalities. Bow, praise, gentle touch. She doesn't shy away, which is a relief. You swing into the saddle and adjust the reins. And here's another ritual that riders perform, though it's rarely spoken aloud, the saddle check. Not just a practical once-over to make sure nothing is loose, but a moment of connection. You press your knees gently into the horse's sides, feeling her shift and adjust under you, testing your weight, your balance. A good horse accepts. A great horse welcomes. You give a slight click of the tongue, and she steps forward, easy and smooth. Another trickles into your mind as you ride, the hierarchy. You're not just a random messenger. Riders of the Yam operate in a strict hierarchy, one marked not by titles but by subtle, coded signals, the material of your belt, the embroidery on your tunic cuffs, the way you wear your hair. Higher-ranked riders, those entrusted with royal messages or critical orders, wore leather belts studded with iron or even bone, their tunics lined with wolf fur instead of simple sheepskin. You glance down at your own gear, plain but tidy, a mark of middle rank. Important enough to be carrying something valuable, not so important that you'd have a retinue or armed escort. That suits you fine. Too much attention invites questions. Questions invite trouble. The Yam runs on order. Everyone knows their place, and stepping above it without cause is as dangerous as ignoring the rituals. There's a phrase riders share with a grim chuckle: the steppe has no mercy for the ambitious. The road stretches again, endless and patient. You shift your weight, settling in for another long ride. And you remember, because how could you forget? This isn't just a race against time. It's a dance with the unseen, a quiet negotiation with tradition, hierarchy, and the whispered promises of a land older than any Khan or king. You bow into the wind, a gesture no one sees, and ride on. The horse beneath you breathes steady and deep, a rhythm you match without thinking. Hours slip past like smoke through your fingers. Out here, time isn't measured by sunrises or sunsets but by the steady cycle of hooves striking the earth, of breaths drawn and released. You adjust your grip on the reins and shift your weight, feeling the old ache settle into your hips. It's the price you paid for life on horseback, joints that creak before you're 30 and a back so tight it might snap. But at least you're not alone. Every rider on the Yam wears these aches like a second skin, a private uniform only the initiated recognize. Your stomach growls again, low and urgent. Time to eat. Carefully, you reach into the small pouch tied at your belt and pull out a strip of bortz, dried meat pounded until it's tough as leather and just as flavorful. Eating on horseback? It's an art form all its own. Mongol etiquette demanded not just that you eat while riding but that you do so properly. No clumsy gnawing like a starving dog. No crumbs tumbling down your tunic. You tear a small piece with your teeth, chew slowly, deliberately. It's not just manners, it's practicality. Gulp too fast and you risk choking. Choke and fall, and the Yam doesn't slow down for fallen riders. Historians still debate whether the Mongol Postal Code ever wrote these rules down or if they simply became a matter of custom, passed from one grizzled rider to the next around flickering station fires. Some argue the etiquette was so rigid it bordered on religious practice, others think it was just hard-learned common sense. You chew methodically, letting the salty toughness seep into your senses. The steppe stretches out, endless and undemanding, as if daring you to lose yourself in its monotony. Another strip of meat, another slow, careful bite. A memory surfaces, your first day training for the Yam. An old man with a face like cracked leather had leaned over, his breath sharp with fermented milk, and whispered, "Chew like the wind moves. Steady. Patient. And never, never, drop a piece." You thought he was joking. Then you watched another trainee, too hungry or too clumsy to obey, drop a shard of meat. He'd been dragged off the training grounds by the scruff of his tunic, forced to apologize to the earth itself in a ritual that involved kneeling for an hour in the dust while the rest of you rode past, pretending not to laugh. It was a lesson that stuck. The steppe has no mercy for the careless. You pocket the last of the bortz, patting the pouch with a practiced flick of your fingers to make sure it's sealed. Dust, not food, is the only thing you're allowed to leave behind. Ahead, the land dips into a shallow valley, the grass giving way to scrubby brush and low, rolling rises. You slow your horse again, scanning the terrain. Bandits were rare along the Yam. The penalties for attacking a courier were so severe that even the most desperate raiders usually thought twice, but still, the occasional fool tried. You keep an eye on the skyline, wary, but nothing stirs except the grass, bowing low under the whisper of the wind. Another tradition flickers through your mind, the ritual of the spare horse. You tap your heels lightly against your mount's sides, signaling a slow, careful canter as you crest the rise. If trouble comes, if a horse breaks down, you can't afford to sit and weep about it. Mongol riders were expected to perform the telugma, the transfer of loyalty, without hesitation. You scan the landscape, though you know what you're looking for doesn't exist out here in the open. At major relay stations, and sometimes hidden along the less traveled routes, there are corrals holding spare horses, dozens, sometimes hundreds. Each ready, saddled, and waiting like living arrows aimed at the horizon. And swapping horses wasn't as simple as jumping from one to the other. It was a ceremony in itself. First, you dismount and bow to your exhausted horse. Gratitude, silent but sincere. This creature has carried you, trusted you, sweated under you. A good rider doesn't abandon that partnership lightly. Then, before touching the new horse, you perform a quiet ritual, nothing fancy. Just a small handful of dust lifted from the ground, blown softly toward the new mount. A way of telling the spirits who mean no harm that you transfer loyalty not out of disrespect but necessity. You recall the story of a young courier who skipped the ritual, impatient to keep moving. His new horse bucked him halfway to death, threw him into a ravine, and broke his leg. He survived, sure, but he never rode the yam again. Historians argue whether such tales were warnings, morality plays, or simple bad luck given a coat of superstition. Doesn't matter. Out here, you don't take chances. You pat your horse's neck, murmuring praise again. No spare horse here, not tonight. Just you, your steed, and the endless hum of the steppe. In the distance, the faint glimmer of another station, low fires, flickering shadows. You click your tongue, spurring your horse into a faster trot. The station looms closer, and as you approach, you slip back into the well-worn steps of the yam's endless etiquette. Slow down. Straighten up. Bow from the saddle. Dismount smoothly. This time, the station master steps out holding a small ceremonial staff, a gerich. A carved wooden tablet about the size of your forearm, engraved with swirling patterns and the symbol of the Great Khan. It's a passport of sorts, a marker of your authority as a postal rider. Most stations recognize your pouch and tunic, but when disputes arise, the gerich settles them. You bow low before accepting it with both hands, your fingers brushing reverently over the worn wood. Even the gerich has its own etiquette. Never drop it, never point it at someone, never lay it on the ground. Riders who dishonored the gerich weren't just punished, they were erased. You tuck the gerich safely into the folds of your cloak, nodding your thanks. No words needed. You've bowed, you've touched the earth, you've honored the horse. Everything else is just wind. As you mount again, the station fades behind you like a dream half remembered. Ahead, the stars still will across the sky, cold and unconcerned. And you ride on, carrying not just a message, but 1,000 silent rules woven into the night. The new horse moves like a river under you, steady, relentless, never hurried but never hesitating. She's a little stiffer than the last, but that's to be expected. Horses rotated through the M system worked harder than soldiers in campaign season, and though they were revered, they weren't pampered. You let her settle into her rhythm while you scan the horizon. Another lonely stretch ahead, flat and treeless, the grass rippling in waves that shimmer under the moonlight. You loosen your shoulders and shake out your hands, small rituals of survival for the human body, just as important as the ones for your horse. Hierarchy rides with you, even now. You can feel it in the weight of the gerich tucked into your cloak, in the embroidered cuffs brushing against your wrists. Every detail of your dress, every stitch, silently broadcasts your rank to the world. High enough that minor station masters treat you with cautious respect. Low enough that powerful nobles wouldn't waste time looking twice at you. This is no accident. Mongol riders were obsessed with hierarchy, not the brittle kind that cracks under pressure, but a flexible, breathing structure designed to move with the empire's endless expansion. Your gear marks you as mid-tier, a functional cog, trusted but replaceable. The belt cinching your waist is simple leather, but the small, plain bronze buckle signals authority to requisition supplies at a station if needed. Historians still argue whether Genghis Khan himself designed these symbols or whether they evolved organically from tribal practices. Some say it was all meticulously planned, another strand in his web to control the sprawling empire without lifting a sword. Others think it was just the old stepways dressed up in imperial grandeur. You lean forward slightly in the saddle, giving the horse her head as the wind rises. The moonlight casts your shadow long and distorted across the ground, a ghost galloping beside you. Suddenly, up ahead, you spot a figure standing beside the road. A lone man, cloaked and hooded, holding something aloft. Your pulse quickens. This could mean trouble, or it could be something far more intricate, a test. Mongol etiquette demanded strict observation when encountering lone travelers. A rider can't simply speed past. Even if you're carrying imperial orders, you must at least acknowledge the presence of others on the steppe. You slow your horse carefully, pulling her into a cautious trot as you approach. The man doesn't move, doesn't call out. Instead, he holds up what looks like a strip of cloth, plain and gray, the kind traditionally used as a greeting flag. You remember your training. This is an old, formal request for assistance. By step custom, even a courier must respond, unless the call is false. Ignoring a genuine request risks angering not only the man himself but the local spirits who guard travelers. And believe me, Mongol riders are not keen on tempting the unseen. You guide your horse closer, stopping at a respectful distance. Without dismounting, because it would be inappropriate unless invited, you raise your right hand in a slow, deliberate arc, palm outward. The man responds by lowering the cloth, placing it across his arms, and bowing deeply. No words. The entire exchange conducted in silence. Satisfied that it's a legitimate greeting and not a trick, you speak the formal words. What do you require, traveler? Mongol etiquette dictated that questions be phrased this way, never as demands. Always an offering, never an obligation. The man straightens, pulls back his hood, and reveals a face weathered like old leather, his beard crusted with frost. He holds out a water skin with both hands, tilting it slightly in your direction. Thirsty. Simple, direct. You dismount smoothly, careful to keep your body language relaxed but formal. Taking a water skin from a stranger might seem easy, but there's a whole dance to it. First, a shallow bow. Then you accept the skin with both hands, fingers touching only the leather, not the traveler's hands. A brief tap against your forehead, respect, and only then do you drink. 2 sips, no more. Anything more could be seen as greed, a mortal offense in the harsh etiquette of the steppe. You hand the skin back with a slight bow, murmuring the traditional thanks. May your road be smooth and your horse tireless. The man smiles faintly, real smiles are rare out here, and steps aside. You remount, another seamless swing into the saddle, and nudge your horse forward. No other words pass between you. None are needed. As you ride on, you reflect on the encounter. Little moments like these seem small, but they're the glue of the Mongol Empire. 1,000 riders meeting 1,000 strangers under 1,000 stars, each one following the same unwritten rules, the same gestures, the same careful balance of deference and pride. Historians often focus on the speed of the yam, on how a message could travel across the empire faster than anything seen before. But they forget, speed alone doesn't build trust. It's the etiquette, the rituals, the shared understanding that made the network unbreakable. The steppe stretches again, wide and silent. Somewhere ahead, another station. Another exchange. Another chance to practice the ancient, invisible art of respect. You lean into the rhythm of the ride, a silent promise to the land and the stars. I ride fast, but I ride properly. The sky begins its slow pivot toward dawn, though you wouldn't know it from the cold. If anything, the air feels sharper now, slicing through your deal and tugging at the thin seams of your gloves. You rub your hands together quickly, careful not to drop the reins, another little balancing act in the endless performance that is a Mongol postal rider's life. Ahead, a faint noise rises on the wind, the distant thrum of hooves. Not the gallop of another courier, though. Slower. Heavier. Herds. You crest a low hill and spot them, a small cluster of horses tethered near a frozen stream, steam rising from their flanks as they shift and snort. And beside them, half buried in the gray dawn light, a corral made from rough-cut posts. A spare horse station. Your shoulders sag in relief. It's been a long stretch since the last relay, and your current mount is showing it, ears drooping, sides heaving under her winter coat. Time for the ritual of the spare horse. You guide her carefully toward the corral, slowing her to a walk. She doesn't fight you, smart girl. She knows relief is close. You dismount slowly, knees cracking, and offer her the standard bow, deep, with hands placed lightly on your thighs. You murmur a few words of thanks, because that's what you do. Mongols didn't treat their horses like tools to be discarded, they treated them like comrades. Historians still argue whether the ritual bow to the horse was born from superstition or necessity. Some suggest it helped forge a bond between rider and mount. Others claim it was a way to acknowledge that, on the steppe, your horse was your life. Lose your horse, lose your world. You walk the horse over to the station master, a squat, barrel-chested man wrapped in layers of felt so thick he looks like a walking bale of wool. No words pass between you. They don't need to. He takes the reins, gives a short nod, and leads your horse away. Now comes the transfer. The corral is full of horses, but you don't just grab the first one you like. Oh no! You stand at the gate and wait, hands folded, posture respectful. It's the station master's job to choose. He knows the horses, knows which ones are fresh, which ones are overdue for rest. Trust is part of the ritual, even if the trust feels, at times, like a test of patience. Finally, he returns leading a new mount, a tall gelding with a gleaming black coat and a mane like spun night. You bow again, lower this time, and step forward carefully, hand outstretched but not grabbing. Never grabbing. You let him smell you first. Let him decide whether you're worth the trouble. The horse snorts, tosses his head once, but doesn't pull away. Good enough. You perform the brief dust ritual, crouch, scoop a handful of earth, sprinkle it lightly toward the horse's hooves. A symbolic transfer of loyalty. One horse to another, one breath to the next. You swing into the saddle with a grunt, adjusting your seat until you find the sweet spot where the stiff wooden frame presses against the right points of your back and thighs without numbing anything important. Mongol saddles are merciless to the untrained, but if you ride them properly, they keep you locked in, secure for days at a time. You glance at the station master. He raises one hand, 3 fingers extended. The old sign for the road ahead is clear for 3 stations. You nod, touching 2 fingers to your brow in acknowledgement, and nudge the gelding forward. As you ride out, the gelding finds his rhythm quickly, his hooves striking the frozen earth with confidence. Fresh horses always feel like a luxury, the closest thing a yam rider gets to a hot bath and a good night's sleep. The sun cracks the horizon, bleeding pale gold into the sky. You adjust your cloak, flipping the heavy wool up over your shoulders to catch the first rays. The light reveals the steppe in new colors, frosted grass glinting like silver, the distant hills painted in soft blue shadows. Your mind drifts as you ride, lulled by the rhythmic jolt of the gelding's stride. You think about all the riders who came before you, who galloped these same paths under the same endless sky. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Each one bound not just by duty but by etiquette, by the invisible lattice of rituals that made the yam something more than a postal service. It made it an empire on horseback. And the horses weren't just tools, they were participants in the ritual. Changing mounts wasn't just practical, it was practically religious. Every bow, every handful of dust, every murmured word was a thread binding you to the living network that stretched from the frozen rivers of the north to the hot deserts of the south. You smile wryly. There's a joke among riders. You bow to your horse more than to your wife. Not that you have a wife. Yam riders rarely did. Who would marry someone who vanished for months at a time, who came back with wind-chapped cheeks and the 1,000-yard stare of someone who's seen one too many frozen sunrises? Ahead, the road bends slightly around a low ridge, the first real change in the landscape in hours. You shift your weight and guide the gelding to follow the curve, careful not to lean too hard. Mongol horses didn't like to be bullied, and you needed his goodwill for the miles ahead. The sun rises higher, and with it, a fresh breeze cuts across the grass, carrying with it the sense of damp earth and distant smoke. Another station can't be far. You take a deep breath, letting the cold, clean air fill your lungs. And you ride on, part of the endless, polite caravan stretching across history. The gelding's breath puffs in steady white clouds as you move, each exhale a small, temporary ghost in the crisp morning air. He's well-trained, obedient without being sluggish, and you feel the ease of his gait under you, one less thing to worry about as the next station slowly takes shape in the distance. You think about how every part of this operation, the horses, the riders, the stations themselves, runs not only on discipline but on deeply ingrained courtesy. And now, as you approach, it's time for a ritual often overlooked but never skipped, greeting the horse. Yes, the horse. You can hear modern minds laughing already, a greeting for a horse? But you know better. Out here, a horse isn't just an animal. It's a lifeline, a companion, a partner. Mongol couriers didn't just swing into a new saddle and gallop off like drunks on market day. No, every fresh mount was greeted properly, as if you were introducing yourself to a proud, suspicious elder. Because in a way, you were. The next station is a smaller one, just 2 yurts and a scattering of rough fences in the frosted grass. A lean man wrapped in a thick gray deal steps out as you slow your horse. You perform the distance bow, right hand across your chest, a slight lean from the waist, no dramatic flourishes. He returns a nod, understated but clear. You dismount with a grunt, knees stiff from the hours in the saddle. The station master points to a stocky mare standing tethered near a line of other horses. Chestnut coat, broad head, thick winter fur bristling against the morning breeze. A good sign. Thick coats mean strong bloodlines, endurance. First things first, you approach slowly, hands visible, no sudden movements. Horses, much like people on the steppe, value calm introductions. You stop a respectful distance away and bow, not to the station master this time, but to the horse. A deep nod of the head, hands out, palms facing the sky in a gesture of peaceful intent. Mongols believed the spirits of the wind and earth watched over animals, and disrespecting a horse could anger not just the beast but the unseen guardians of the road. Historians still argue about the origins of this ritual. Some claim it's rooted in ancient shamanistic practices, a leftover from the days before empires and khans. Others believe it was a purely practical matter, show a horse respect, and it's less likely to bite or bolt. You whisper a few words under your breath, low and steady, strong heart, fast hooves, open road. It's the traditional greeting, not just empty words but a kind of verbal handshake, a small bond of trust formed in sound. The mare flicks her ears but doesn't step away. Good. You approach slowly, offering your hand for her to sniff. She lowers her head slightly, nostrils flaring, breath warm against your skin. Once she's accepted you, you move to inspect the saddle, running your hands along the leather straps and wooden frame. Everything seems in order. Mongol saddles are brutally practical, no heavy ornamentation, just functional gear built for the long haul. Satisfied, you swing up into the saddle with a practiced move. Your body protests, knees creaking, but you settle quickly, adjusting the reins with light fingers. The station master watches you, unreadable. You nod once more in thanks, a brief, crisp movement, and he lifts a hand in reply. No words are exchanged. They're not needed. You nudge the mare forward, feeling the new rhythm beneath you. She's different from the gelding, shorter strides, a bit more bounce, but steady. Reliable. You'll make good time with her. As you ride out, you think about how much of the yam's success rested not on roads or horses but on rituals like this one. Greeting the horse wasn't a waste of time. It was an investment in trust, in partnership. Every successful ride, every safe arrival at a distant station, was built on a foundation of countless small courtesies, strung together like pearls on an invisible thread. You adjust your cloak against the rising sun, which now hangs low in the sky, pale and thin. The steppe rolls out before you, an endless sea of frost-dusted grass, broken only by the occasional rocky outcrop or scraggly bush. Your mind wanders, as it always does during long rides, to the quiet debates among your fellow riders. Some argue that the old rituals were fading, that the newer generation of couriers, hungry for speed, impatient with tradition, would let the customs slip away. But you? You know better. Out here, the rituals are the road. Without them, without the tiny bows and whispered blessings, the yam would unravel, and the steppe would swallow its riders whole. You reach down and pat the mare's neck, murmuring praise she probably doesn't understand but seems to appreciate anyway. The wind picks up again, and with it comes the scent of wood smoke. Another station isn't far. You smile grimly. Another greeting waits. Another ritual. And the road, as always, rolls on. The mare's hooves drum a steady rhythm against the frozen ground, her breath puffing out in quick bursts. You lean forward, shielding your face against the wind that seems to pick up with every passing mile, tugging at the edges of your cloak like impatient fingers. The scent of wood smoke thickens in the air, mingling with the cold and dust. You tighten your grip on the reins, scanning the horizon for movement. Out here, you learn to read the smallest signs, the way smoke curls, the faint glimmer of a river far off, or the low murmur of voices carried by the wind. And then you see them, a small cluster of yurts, not the neat, regulated setup of a relay station but something different. A traveling camp. Your pulse ticks a little faster. Passing through a camp is a delicate business, full of unwritten rules and quiet signals. You can't just gallop past like a lord surveying his fields. No, Mongol etiquette demanded that when you passed through another's territory, even if it was temporary, even if it was just a handful of nomads on the move, you showed respect. First, you slow to a walk, giving your horse the time to catch her breath and yourself the chance to study the camp. Maybe a dozen yurts, arranged in a loose circle, a few tethered animals grazing nearby, goats, horses, a scattering of sheep. Men move about the camp, tending fires, checking gear, their eyes turning toward you with the practiced wariness of the steppe. You guide your mare in a wide arc, not heading straight toward the camp but curving around it in a deliberate, open approach. Aggressive riders charge in. Bandits barrel down on a camp without warning. But a Yam courier? A Yam courier makes himself known before he's close enough to shout. At a safe distance, maybe 60 paces, you perform the bow. It's not the deep, hand-over-heart bow you use at the relay stations, but a different one. Right hand open, arm raised at shoulder height, palm out. The open hand greeting signals that you come without weapons drawn, without hostility. One of the figures in the camp, a tall man in a blue deal and a fur-trimmed hat, steps forward. He raises his hand in reply, matching your gesture. Only then do you allow yourself to ride closer, keeping your pace slow, your posture straight. Historians still debate whether this formal system of gestures developed during the early Mongol conquests or if it predates even Genghis Khan's rise, a relic from tribal diplomacy where words could be misheard but gestures rarely lied. Some claim the Khan's generals codified the greetings, creating a near-universal language across the empire. You believe it's older than memory. As you near the camp's edge, you bow again, this time from the saddle, a slight dip of the head and shoulders, and the man responds with a nod. You don't speak unless spoken to first. That's the rule. He steps closer, still keeping a respectful distance, and says something in a low voice, words carried off by the wind. It's a greeting, formal and polite. Traveler, what road do you follow? You answer with the traditional reply, the road of the Khan, straight and swift. A small smile flickers at the corner of his mouth, and he gestures, inviting you to pass. You nod once, sharply, and steer your horse wide, skirting the camp at a pace just above a walk. You keep your eyes forward, not staring at the yurts or the people. Curiosity is considered rude in this situation. A courier's gaze should be on the road, not prying into other lives. As you ride past, you catch glimpses from the corners of your eyes, children playing near a cart laden with wool, women tending a fire and slicing thin strips of meat to dry in the sun, an old man with a hawk perched on his wrist. Life here moves as it always has, slow and deliberate, shaped more by the rhythms of the earth and sky than by the whims of emperors. You pass the last yurt, and only then do you allow yourself to pick up the pace, urging the mare into an easy trot. The camp recedes behind you, swallowed by the steppes' endless monotony. You breathe a little easier. Etiquette isn't just about politeness, it's about safety. A misstep, a wrong gesture, a poorly timed word, those are things that get riders killed. Not by sword or spear necessarily, but by being quietly denied the help they might desperately need down the road. The mare finds her rhythm again, and you settle into the saddle, muscles loosening with each step. As the day stretches on, the land changes subtly. The grass grows thinner, the wind harsher. You're entering the lands of a different tribe now, one known for being especially prickly about their territory. You reach down and check the pouch at your side, the message still secure, the gerrage tucked safely away. These are the things that grant you passage, but only if combined with the right manners. Ahead, you spot a marker stone, flat, low, almost swallowed by the grass. You know what it means. An invisible border. Not drawn on any map, but real enough to anyone who knows what to look for. You slow your horse to a walk and perform the formalities again, dismount, crouch, and place your palm flat against the earth. The gesture is old, maybe older than the yam itself, a way of telling the spirits and the people alike that you know you're a guest, not a conqueror. You rise, dust your hand lightly on your cloak, and remount. The mare shifts under you, snorting once, but falls into step easily. Historians still argue about these borders, whether they were acknowledged officially or whether the yams simply learned to work within the old tribal divisions. You suspect the answer is somewhere in between, as most truths are. The steppe is a vast, empty place, but it's crowded with rules, with invisible lines of allegiance and ancient grudges. You guide the mare forward, past the marker stone, and into the heart of another territory. One more road. One more set of rules to remember. And always, always forward. The mare's ears flick nervously as you ride deeper into the new territory, and you can't blame her. The air feels different here, tenser somehow, heavier. You shift your weight, sitting a little taller in the saddle, hand loose but ready on the reins. You're prepared, because sooner or later, you know what's coming, an invitation you can't refuse. It starts the way it always does. A lone figure steps into view from behind a rocky outcrop, wrapped in heavy furs, a bough slung across his back, his face obscured by the shadow of his hood. You tighten your hold on the reins, slow your pace to a crawl. The man raises a hand, not in greeting but palm down, fingers spread, an unmistakable signal. Stop. You're invited. You sigh quietly. It's not a robbery, not yet. It's a summons, the formal kind. You've been asked to visit a yurt, and saying no isn't really an option, no matter how tight your schedule is or how tired your bones feel. Mongol etiquette is merciless when it comes to hospitality. Refusing an invitation, even from a stranger, even when you're in a hurry, is an insult, one that could end in bloodshed if handled poorly. The yam grants you status and speed, but not immunity from the rules of the steppe. You bring the mare to a stop and dismount smoothly. No sudden moves. Every gesture must be slow, deliberate, respectful. The man waits silently until you've straightened up, then turns and gestures for you to follow. You do, leading the mare behind you, the leather reins cool and rough in your palm. A small camp unfolds around the bend, for yurts arranged in a tight semicircle, smoke curling from the tops, the scent of roasting meat drifting on the wind. Children scatter at your arrival, and a pair of women pause their work gutting a sheep to watch you pass. The man leads you to the largest yurt and holds the flap aside. You bow, a shallow, polite dip of the head, and step inside. The yurt is warm, almost stifling after the cold outside. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, sweat, and a dozen different spices. Around the central fire pit, a group of men sit cross-legged, their faces lined and weathered by wind and years. They fall silent as you enter, all eyes tracking you. You perform the necessary rituals quickly, remove your gloves and tuck them into your belt, step with your right foot first across the threshold, bow your head low without making direct eye contact. Historians still debate the origins of these specific gestures, whether they're holdovers from ancient steppe hospitality customs or were formalized during the expansion of the empire to keep bloodshed to a minimum when guests and hosts came from rival clans. Either way, you know better than to skip a single step. One of the older men, likely the head of this family or clan, nods, and you bow deeper in response. He gestures to a spot near the fire, and you sit carefully, folding your legs under you, cloak tucked neatly out of the way. Mongol etiquette demands tidy sitting, sprawling is for drunks and dogs. A bowl is passed to you, arag again, of course, and you accept it with both hands. You touch the rim to your forehead before taking a sip, grimacing slightly at the familiar sourness. The man speaks, a short, clipped greeting, asking your name and purpose. You respond with the formulaic reply, I ride for the Khan, on the road of the yam. It's enough. No need to explain the message or your destination. The yam's business is not for casual conversation. He nods again and gestures toward a platter of roasted meat laid out on a wooden board. This is the tricky part. By tradition, refusing food is an insult. But a rider in a hurry can't afford to linger over a feast. There's a ritual dance for this too. You accept a small piece, eat it slowly and appreciatively, and bow your thanks before signaling, politely, that you must continue your journey. You pick up a slice of mutton, still steaming, and take a deliberate, measured bite. It's rich, greasy, and delicious, the fat melting on your tongue. Hunger gnaws at you, urging you to devour more, but you resist, chewing slowly, savoring it like it's the finest delicacy in the world. When you've finished, you wipe your fingers on a cloth offered by one of the women and bow again, this time deeper and slower, signaling gratitude and the desire to depart. The headman watches you for a moment, then grunts and waves a hand. Permission granted. You rise carefully, bow once more, and step backward out of the yurt, never turning your back on your hosts. Only once you're outside do you allow yourself a breath of relief. You retrieve your mare, who waits patiently where you left her, and mount up in one smooth motion. A few of the children watch from a safe distance, giggling behind their hands. As you guide the mare back toward the road, you glance over your shoulder. The men at the entrance to the camp are still watching, silent and unmoving. You bow once more, one last show of respect, and then nudge your mare into a trot. The camp falls away behind you, swallowed by the endless steppe. Mongol hospitality is a double-edged sword. Generous, yes, but also dangerous for those who don't respect its boundaries. And you've seen what happens to couriers who get it wrong. Best not to dwell on it. The mare finds her pace again, and you settle into the rhythm of the ride. Another encounter survived. Another set of rules obeyed. And the road, as always, stretches on. The mare's hooves find their steady cadence once more, thudding against the cold, hard ground with the kind of loyalty only time and training can forge. You shake out your shoulders, easing the tightness creeping down your back. The yurt visit lingers in your muscles, not from strain but from the tension of navigating hospitality without misstep. The road ahead wavers slightly under the rising sun, a ribbon of dust and possibility. You settle into the ride, letting your thoughts drift ahead of you. But you're not alone for long. Another small camp comes into view, a scattering of yurts, more modest than the last. Your stomach tightens. It's not that you're unwelcome, it's that you know what's coming next. Gifts. Mongol etiquette demands a lot from a traveler, but one of its trickier rules is the art of accepting gifts, especially ones you don't want. You slow your mare instinctively. The ritual demands it. Passing by without acknowledging the camp would be seen as a slight, and you already know from experience that news travels faster on the steppe than even the swiftest horse. Reputation is fragile out here, thinner than ice under spring sun. As you approach, a woman steps forward from the nearest yurt, a bundle cradled in her arms. She's older, face lined like a well-worn map, her deal faded but clean. She holds out the bundle toward you as you draw near. You pull the mare to a halt, dismounting slowly and carefully. Respect is not just in what you do, it's in how slowly you do it, how deliberately you move, how deeply you bow. You step forward and bow low, palms open, then extend your hands. She places the bundle in them with the solemnity of a sacred rite. It's warm, still slightly damp, a loaf of bread wrapped in a strip of wool cloth, dense and heavy. You bow again, murmuring the traditional phrase, "I accept your gift with an open heart." You already know the problem. The bread smells faintly sour, the wool wrap stained and rough. It's not spoiled exactly, but you can tell from experience it's made from millet and goat's milk, an acquired taste you've never really acquired. But there's no refusing. Refusing a gift is worse than any insult. It dishonors the giver, their yurt, and their ancestors. Historians still argue whether this custom originated from survival necessity or pure tradition. Was it born of times so lean that even a scrap of bread was a treasure not to be disdained? Or was it always about honor, about the invisible web of obligation that binds stranger to stranger on the open steppe? Doesn't matter now. You accept the bread with a deep, slow bow, then press it lightly to your forehead, a sign that you acknowledge the gift as precious, regardless of your private opinion. The woman bows in return, her lined face unreadable. You murmur a few more traditional words of thanks, tie the bundle carefully to your saddle, and remount. Only once you're back on the mare's back do you allow yourself the briefest of grimaces. You'll nibble it later, slowly, respectfully, and probably end up grimacing with each bite. But you'll eat it. To discard it would be unthinkable. The steppe sees everything, and wastefulness is a sin the land remembers. As you ride on, the bundle thudding gently against the saddle, you wonder if perhaps the gift-giving etiquette wasn't originally about the receiver at all. Maybe it was about the giver, an opportunity to demonstrate generosity, hospitality, the wealth of spirit that Mongol culture prizes even more than the wealth of herds or gold. Another station looms in the distance, its low yurts clustered like sleeping turtles against the rising hills. You sit a little straighter, adjusting your cloak, preparing once more for the rituals to come. You think about the bread, still warm against your hip. It doesn't smell any better with the passing time, but you remind yourself again, it's not about the taste. It's about the respect it represents, the unseen currents of trust and obligation that swirl around every interaction on this endless road. The mare snorts and shakes her head, tossing her mane against the building wind. You lean low and pat her neck, murmuring a few quiet words of reassurance. Another day. Another stretch of road. Another reminder that out here, survival is as much about manners as it is about muscle. And as you approach the station, you feel the bread's weight pulling gently at your side, not just a meal, not just a gift, but a symbol of all the invisible rules that ride alongside you, mile after careful mile. You smile wryly to yourself. Better get ready to eat later. Whether you like it or not. The wind stiffens as the afternoon wears on, whistling low and steady like a warning hum beneath the hooves of your mare. The land flattens once more, the horizon stretching taut, and the relay station you spotted earlier is swallowed by distance behind you. You loosen your grip on the reins slightly, allowing the mare ahead as you roll your shoulders and prepare for the next inevitability, the chance of trouble. Because no matter how many rituals you follow or bows you offer, there's always a moment when etiquette alone won't be enough to save you. You first catch sight of them as three dark figures crest a low rise, riders, moving fast and low to the ground. No banners, no greetings. Your heart stutters once and then settles into a cold, calm beat. Bandits. The Yem may carry the authority of the great Khan himself, But out here on the lonely stretches of the steppe, there are always those desperate or foolish enough to test that authority. And if they recognize your belt, your tunic, the gerage tucked into your cloak, it won't matter. A rider alone is still a tempting prize. You slow your mare just enough to tighten your grip, mind racing through the rituals you've been trained for in moments like these. First step, posture. You sit tall, pulling your cloak around you like a shield. Fear is a scent that carries farther than smoke on the wind. You press your knees lightly into the mare's flanks, signaling her without words to be ready to move fast. Second step, greeting. Yes, even now. You raise your hand high, palm outward, the formal salute of a courier on yem duty. A declaration of neutrality and imperial protection. It's a gamble, but on the steppe, sometimes deference buys you more than bravado. The riders don't answer. They're closer now, and you can see the glint of light-off steel at their belts. Third step, the bow. It feels absurd to bow in the face of a potential attack, but this is the way of the yam. You lean forward slightly in the saddle, a small, precise gesture of respect, not for the riders, but for the road, for the spirits watching over you. Historians still argue whether these courtesies in dangerous situations were practical attempts to de-escalate violence or a stubborn adherence to tradition, even when death seemed inevitable. You don't have time for academic debates. The riders split, two angling to the sides, one coming straight for you. Your mare shifts under you, sensing the change, muscles tensing. The lead rider pulls up short a dozen paces away. His horse stamps and tosses its head. He studies you in silence, dark eyes narrow beneath a fur cap. You stay perfectly still, hand resting lightly on the saddle horn, the gerage tucked where it's visible if he's close enough to see. There's a long, tense pause. The wind tugs at your cloak, whistling between you. And then, slowly, almost reluctantly, the lead rider raises his hand and mirrors your salute. A flick of his wrist, sharp and dismissive, and the other two riders rein in. You bow again, deeper this time, never breaking a contact. The lead rider nudges his horse forward 2 steps, his gaze sliding over you, taking in the belt, the tunic, the glint of the gerage hidden in your folds. Another beat of silence. Finally, he spits to the side, mutters something you can't catch, and wheels his horse around with a rough tug. The others follow, and within moments they're a blur against the empty horizon. You wait until there's specks in the distance before you allow yourself to exhale. Trouble, averted by nothing more than the weight of tradition and the silent, invisible armor of etiquette. You nudge the mare forward again, her ears still pinned back but her stride steady. You wonder as you ride, was it the salute that saved you? The bow? The gerage? Or was it something deeper, older, harder to name? The unspoken understanding that even in lawlessness, there's a language older than conquest, more binding than fear. You're not sure. And you're not eager to find out by breaking the rules. You reach down and pat the mare's neck, murmuring praise. She carried you through it, steady as a stone, silent as a prayer. The steppe rolls on, indifferent to your narrow escape, the grass whispering secrets you're too tired to hear. You adjust your cloak against the wind, the bread from earlier bumping lightly against your hip, a strange, comforting reminder that small rituals can carry you as surely as strong legs and sharp eyes. You ride on, the sun dipping low, the road unspooling endlessly ahead. And behind you, the wind erases the tracks as if you were never there at all. The sun dips lower still, the sky bleeding into deep blues and burnt oranges, and you ride deeper into the long shadows of evening. The mare's ears flick toward the horizon as if she, too, senses the encroaching dark. You let her slow to a steady walk. There's no station in sight yet, and you'll need to prepare for nightfall with the same care you give every other moment on the road. The wind hums low and constant, pulling at the edges of your cloak. You adjust it tighter, but there's no use fighting the chill that seeps through regardless. The cold is not your enemy, it's just another old friend to respect, like the grass and the wind and the silence. Ahead, you spot a lone figure near a stone cairn, a familiar sight marking a spiritual boundary. This is it, the end of one district, the beginning of another. But more importantly, this cairn marks the formal place for the final ritual of the day, the farewell. You ease the mare to a halt and dismount carefully, boots crunching in the dry grass. She snorts, tossing her mane as you untie the precious bundle from the saddle. No, not the bread. Something older. More essential. It's a simple strip of cloth, dyed a pale blue, the color of the eternal sky the Mongols revered. You tie it carefully around the cairn's highest stone, fingers working slow and sure, a prayer without words. This is the kadog, the ceremonial scarf offered to the spirits of the land as a blessing and as a thank you. You press your palms together and bow deeply to the cairn. This isn't a ritual for show. This is for you, for the road, for the endless sky overhead. You murmur the old words under your breath. May my horse stay sure. May my message find its end. May the road remember me. Historians still argue whether these cairns were ancient shrines or simple way markers that acquired spiritual significance over time. Some say Genghis Khan himself ordered riders to honor them, others claim they predate the empire by centuries. You don't argue. You bow again, slow and low. Then you turn back to the mare, who waits patiently. You pat her side and whisper a short blessing to her as well. She's earned it. There's one more ritual to perform, the farewell at a full gallop. It sounds dramatic, and it is, but it's not just for show. Riders end each day's journey, or leave a territory, by departing at full speed, a sign of respect to the land they leave behind and a promise of speed to the land ahead. You tighten the girth strap, check the reins, and swing back into the saddle. The mare shifts under you, restless, sensing what's coming. You lean forward, gather the reins in one hand, and with a short, sharp click of your tongue, you urge her into a gallop. She bursts forward, hooves pounding the earth, mane streaming like a banner behind her. The cairn flashes past your peripheral vision, and you resist the temptation to look back. Mongol riders never look back after a farewell. The road is ahead, not behind. What's done is done. The steppe blurs around you, a world reduced to the rhythmic thunder of hooves and the biting rush of wind. You crouch low over the saddle, feeling the raw, physical poetry of motion, the way horse and rider become one creature hurtling across the vastness. This is what the farewell ritual is really about, not just gratitude but momentum, the deep, unbreakable bond between human, horse, and horizon. A promise that no matter how long the road, no matter how empty the land, you will keep moving forward. The mare eventually slows of her own accord, breath heaving, sides glistening with sweat. You let her, easing back in the saddle, hands light on the reins. The world settles around you again, the shadows stretching longer, the sky deepening to velvet black, stars already winking into existence. You pull her to a halt and dismount again. She stands quietly as you check her over, running your hands along her flanks, inspecting her legs, making sure no injury hides beneath the surface. Satisfied, you tug your saddle blanket loose and set it down on a patch of dry grass. You won't risk pushing her further tonight. Better to sleep under the open sky than to overwork a good horse. You pull out a strip of dried meat, break off a small piece, and offer it to the mare. She lips it from your palm, chewing slowly. You sit down heavily on the blanket, cloak wrapped tight around you, and lean back against the saddle, staring up at the growing sea of stars. The rituals are over for now. The day's bows have been offered. The farewell's made. You chew your own piece of meat, tougher than boot leather but enough to keep your stomach quiet. The fireless camp is no accident, no flame to give you away in the night. You've made yourself small, part of the land, as riders before you have done for generations. You stare up at the stars and wonder, not for the first time, if they ever watch you back. If the old spirits and the wandering ancestors still glide across the sky, nodding approvingly at the riders who still remember the rules, who still carry not just messages but ancient manners across the endless, whispering steppe. You close your eyes, letting the sound of the mare grazing nearby and the soft sigh of the wind lull you towards sleep. Tomorrow the road will rise to meet you again. But tonight, under the eternal sky, you rest. No fire. No words. Just the soft breathing of a horse and the invisible hand of etiquette holding you fast to the world. Morning creeps in slowly, spilling pale light across the steppe. You blink awake, stiff and cold but alive, the sky above you a blank canvas of soft gray. The mare nickers quietly nearby, already awake, already waiting. You rise slowly, muscles protesting, and brush the frost from your cloak. There's no grand ceremony for waking, no formal ritual for rising from a night's camp, just the quiet continuation of the journey, woven into the fabric of every breath and every hoofbeat. You fold the saddle blanket neatly, check the mare's legs again out of habit, and prepare to mount. But today, as you cinch the saddle tight and secure the bundle of bread at your hip, a darker thought presses at the edges of your mind. Deadlines. You glance east, gauging the sun's feeble progress above the horizon. Riders on the Yam weren't just expected to move quickly, they were expected to move with the kind of speed that terrified lesser messengers. Each leg of the journey was timed with almost ritual precision, and couriers who missed their marks too often, or too drastically, faced punishments grim enough to make you shiver harder than the morning chill. Historians still debate the severity of these punishments. Some say it was demotion, loss of rank, loss of horse, loss of the hard-earned pride that riders carried. Others speak of harsher fates, public shaming, confiscation of property, forced labor. And in the most whispered stories? Death. Not a swift death either, but a slow, ceremonial execution, not out of cruelty, but out of the need to reinforce that a failure in the Yam was a failure to the empire itself. If you couldn't keep the wheels of communication turning, what good were you to the great Khan? You shake the thought off as you mount. Fear doesn't move a rider forward. Only resolve does. The mare snorts and sets off at a brisk trot, and you let her ease into a faster pace as the land rolls away beneath you. Another station waits ahead, another switch, another chance to shave time off your journey. Your fingers brush the gerrage tucked inside your cloak. You check, as you always do, that it's still there. A carved slip of wood, unimpressive to look at, but a symbol of authority as binding as any sword or seal. It grants you the right to demand a fresh horse, supplies, even shelter. But it doesn't grant you forgiveness if you're late. The Yam's expectations are clear, speed is loyalty. Delay is betrayal. You press your knees gently into the mare's flanks, and she responds, surging forward into a canter. The grass blurs past, the wind bites harder, and your mind narrows down to the essentials: hooves, breath, the steady thud of your heart. The station appears on the horizon, a clutch of low yurts huddled against the wind. You lean forward slightly, loosening your shoulders, preparing once again for the dance of bows and formalities. Even under the pressure of a deadline, you can't rush this. The rituals have to be performed correctly, even when the seconds feel like they're burning your skin. You slow the mare to a controlled trot as you near the station. Bow from the saddle, hand over heart, tilt just so. Dismount with a crisp slide to the ground, knees bending to absorb the shock. The station master steps forward, a thick-set woman with sharp eyes and a mouth set in a thin, uncompromising line. You offer the pouch with both hands, fingers extended, the way you've done a dozen times before. She accepts it with the same precision, nods, and gestures to a fresh horse already saddled and waiting. You resist the urge to hurry. Even now, even with the clock ticking somewhere in the back of your mind, you go through the motions, bow to the old mare, whisper a thanks into her ear, pat her flank lightly. You step toward the new horse slowly, hands visible, voice low and calm as you offer your greeting. No sudden movements. No signs of fear or haste. A rider in a rush is a rider without honor. The new horse, a rangy bay with alert ears and a high-strung energy, snorts but doesn't shy away. You tie your gear quickly but carefully, mount with a smooth swing of your leg. Only when you're settled do you allow yourself to glance east again, feeling the pressure of the unseen deadline tightening around you like a noose. You bow to the station master one last time, deep and formal, and she returns it with a barely perceptible nod. And then you're off, the bay leaping forward as if he can feel the urgency humming under your skin. You ride low and fast, wind whipping your cloak back, the ground a blur of color and motion. The sun climbs higher, the air sharpens, and your breath comes in steady bursts. Time, you remind yourself, is not your enemy. Carelessness is. The steppe stretches ahead, indifferent and endless. And behind you, somewhere far beyond the horizon, the ticking clock of the empire waits. No second chances. No excuses. Only the road. The bay horse flies beneath you, muscles taut, strides long and effortless. You hunker low, letting the wind shear past your face, cloak snapping around your legs. The cold tears at your skin, but you barely notice. The pressure of time weighs heavier than the weather, heavier than the hunger gnawing at your gut, heavier even than the ache in your joints from days in the saddle. The Yam demands swiftness, but it also demands formality, and you've learned to juggle both like a juggler keeping knives aloft in a windstorm. You glance down at your belt, where a simple wooden disc dangles from a cord, your gerrage. A small thing, but it carries the weight of the Khan's authority, a symbol recognized across the empire, from the frozen lakes of Siberia to the scorching sands of Persia. Not much to look at, a rough disc of wood, hand-smoothed by the oils of countless palms, inscribed with a few angular characters. But it's what the gerrage represents that matters. The bearer of the gerrage travels not as a beggar, not as a thief, but as an arm of the empire itself. Station masters bow to it. Local lords respect it. Even bandits, The ones with enough sense to know their own limits will glance at it and think twice. Historians still bicker over whether the carriage was an original Mongol innovation or borrowed from older Chinese courier systems. Some say it was based on ancient tokens used by the Tang dynasty, adapted and streamlined by Genghis Khan's relentless mind. Others insist it was wholly Mongol, as practical and brutal in its efficiency as the rest of their empire building. You don't care who invented it. You care that it works. The station masters never question your arrival. They see the carriage and know you speak not for yourself, but for something far greater. It smooths the path, clears the way, transforms an ordinary rider into an unstoppable force. But it comes with its own price. You brush your fingers against it briefly, feeling the familiar ridges of the carving. Lose it, and you lose more than your right to fast horses and fresh food. You lose protection. You lose the invisible armor that keeps you alive on these lonely rides. And if word reached the Khan that you lost your carriage, well, better to lose a hand. The bay snorts and pushes harder, sensing your urgency. The land blurs past, sparse grass, frozen streams, a scattering of low hills that look almost like sleeping beasts in the fading light. Ahead, a line of smoke smudges the sky, a relay station, if you're lucky. You push the bay harder, feeling his powerful body stretch into a full gallop. You lean forward, whispering encouragement, even as your thighs burn and your knees scream. Another hour. Maybe 2. You think of all the other riders who have carried messages like this, urgent missives, secret letters, orders that could change the fate of cities. All of it moving on horseback, wrapped in layers of etiquette and tradition as thick as your deal. It's said that a message could travel across the entire empire in just a few days, faster than armies, faster than news could travel on foot. And you believe it, because you live it. You crest a rise, and there it is, a station, larger than most, smoke curling from the tops of half a dozen yurts. Horses graze in a rough corral, and 2 figures stand watch near the entrance. You slow the bay to a canter, then a walk, your heart still hammering in your chest. No sudden movements, no rush, no matter how badly you want to collapse from the saddle. Mongol etiquette is not a thing to be shed, not even when time threatens to crush you. You sit tall, straighten your cloak, and bow from the saddle, slow and formal, hand over heart. One of the figures steps forward, a woman in a crimson sash that marks her as the senior station master. She returns your bow with a crisp nod. You dismount with stiff legs, wincing slightly as your boots hit the ground. You walk forward, the bay's reins loose in one hand, the other reaching into your cloak to produce the carriage. Both hands. Fingers open. Offer, don't demand. The station master accepts it, her face unreadable as she examines the disc briefly before nodding again. A gesture, and 2 stable hands emerge to take your horse. You bow again, slightly deeper, then straighten. No words. Not yet. The carriage has spoken for you. The station master gestures toward the main yurt. You follow her inside, the warmth and smoke hitting you like a wall. The interior is orderly, spare, everything a courier needs and nothing more. A low table, a pot of boiling broth, a rack of fresh saddles. You're offered food, as is custom, a bowl of soup, a strip of dried meat. You accept, but don't linger. Time is a noose tightening around your neck. You eat quickly but respectfully, finishing the broth with the proper gestures. Bowl lifted to forehead in thanks before setting it down, never with a clatter. When you're done, you retrieve your carriage with the same 2-handed ritual, tucking it safely away once more. Outside, a fresh horse waits, saddled and restless. You approach carefully, bow to the horse, offer a whisper of praise. The bay watches you from the corral, and you bow to him too, a silent thank you for the miles behind you. Then you mount the new horse, lighter and quicker, and adjust your cloak against the wind. Another bow to the station master. Another nod in return. And then, without a word, you're off again, the new horse surging forward, muscles taut with energy. The steppe opens before you, the sky darkening into twilight, and the road stretches on, unbroken, unforgiving, and utterly yours to conquer. The carriage presses against your chest, a small, constant weight. A reminder. You don't just ride for yourself. You ride for an empire. The twilight deepens, bleeding out the last colors of the day until everything is shades of ink and ash. You ride low and fast, the new horse eager beneath you, its strides long and tireless. The cold sharpens again, the kind that slices through your cloak and settles deep in your bones. You shift in the saddle, trying to find a more forgiving angle, but there's no real comfort here. There never is. The carriage swings gently against your chest with each movement. You find yourself reaching for it now and again, not checking that it's there. You know it's there, but as a kind of reassurance. An anchor. You're not just a man on a horse. You are the road itself. But even the road cracks eventually. Stories ripple through the yam like wind over grass, stories of rebellions, small and fierce, brief as summer storms. Riders refusing orders. Station masters who turn their backs on the old codes. Pouches of messages quietly burned or buried in the endless earth rather than delivered. Historians still argue about how often this happened, whether it was common or rare, whether it marked the slow decline of the yam system or was just the natural fraying of any empire stretched too wide. But you've heard the whispers at station fires, in the low, furtive voices of men too tired to hold on to fear. Riders who, after years of perfect obedience, simply rode away. Not into the next station, not toward their destination, but out into the wilds, leaving the road behind them like a discarded cloak. No messages, no greetings, no bows. Only freedom. Of course, they never lasted. Not really. The yam was too tight a web, and the Empire's reach was too long. The best they could hope for was a few weeks, maybe a few months, before the Empire's silent hand closed around them. And when it did, there were no second chances. You think about that now, the horse thundering beneath you, the carriage pressing against your chest like a silent accusation. Could you do it? Could you just not arrive? Ride somewhere else, slip beyond the web, vanish into the spaces between maps? You push the thought away. You are tired. That's all. The road is long, and the mind grows strange when all you have for company are hooves and stars. You crest a low rise, and there it is, your destination. At last, a sprawling encampment of yurts, smoke rising from their tops in lazy spirals, the flicker of torchlight casting long, uncertain shadows. Not just a station, but a hub, a major relay point where multiple roads converge like rivers feeding into a sea. Your horse slows as you approach, instinctively sensing the end of the journey. You pat his neck, murmuring praise, and sit taller, adjusting your cloak and brushing the dust from your deal. Even now, especially now, the rituals matter. You ride toward the camp's perimeter at a careful trot. As you near, you raise your right hand in the formal courier's salute. A guard steps forward, his silhouette sharp against the firelight. He returns the salute and gestures for you to proceed. You dismount slowly, carefully, suppressing the wince as your feet hit the ground. Your knees ache, your spine feels like it's been hammered by the gods, but you straighten and perform the necessary bow, hand over heart, head lowered just enough to show respect without submission. A boy runs up and takes your horse's reins. You nod your thanks and watch as he leads the animal away toward the corral. Inside the camp, it's warm and noisy, the low murmur of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, the rich smell of meat roasting over open fires. You pass through it silently, a shadow among shadows, until you reach the central yurt. You pause outside, collecting yourself. This is it. You step forward, pushing aside the heavy felt flap, and duck inside. The air is thick with heat and smoke, lit by a dozen oil lamps that cast a golden glow over everything. At the far side of the room, seated on a cushion embroidered with the crest of the Empire, is the senior courier officer, an old man with a face carved from stone and eyes that have seen too many riders come and go. You bow low, hands open and empty, and wait. He studies you for a long moment before nodding once. You step forward and, with the utmost care, untie the pouch from your belt. You hold it in both hands, arms extended, and offer it to him. He accepts it silently, fingers brushing against yours for the briefest of moments. Transaction complete. You bow again, deeper this time, and step back. No words are exchanged. None are needed. The old man gestures, and a servant brings forward a small wooden chest. He opens it, revealing the new carriage you will carry for your next journey, already prepared. You take it with both hands, perform the final bow of the night, and step backward out of the yurt, the cold air slicing into you as you emerge. You stand there for a moment, feeling the weight of the new carriage, heavier somehow than the last. The journey is over, but the road never ends. You pull your cloak tighter around you and walk toward the fire pits, where other riders hunch against the cold, faces half hidden in shadow. You nod to them as you pass. They nod back. Nothing more. No greetings, no smiles. Just the quiet, Grim camaraderie of men who ride the endless roads and bow to the endless winds. You find a patch of ground near a low burning fire, spread your saddle blanket, and sit. The stars glimmer above, cold and distant. You stare into the flames, listening to the wind whisper across the steppe. Tomorrow, you will ride again. Tomorrow, the rituals will begin anew. But for tonight, for one small, stolen moment, you simply exist. A rider. A horse. A message. And the silent, unbreakable etiquette that binds them all together. The fire's glow flickers softly in the gathering darkness, casting long shadows that dance like ghosts across the frozen earth. You sit wrapped in your cloak, the weight of the new carriage warm against your chest, a tangible link between you and the empire that stretches across endless horizons. The murmurs of other riders blend into the night, a quiet chorus of tired voices and shifting blankets. Your hands rest lightly on your knees, fingers tracing the worn leather of your gloves, and you let your gaze drift upward. The stars are sharp and cold, eternal witnesses to the endless dance of horse and rider, message and road. They have watched this ritual unfold for centuries, silent and steady. You think back on the miles you've ridden, the dusty plains, the silent yurts, the fires that warmed your fingers and the cold that bit at your skin. You remember the bows, the whispered blessings, the careful greetings to horses and men alike. Each gesture, each small act of respect, was a thread woven into the vast tapestry of the Mongol Postal network. Historians still debate whether it was the speed of the yam or the strict etiquette that truly held the empire together. You know the truth lies somewhere in the spaces between, the pace that pushed you forward, and the rituals that kept you human amid the vast, indifferent steppe. The mare grazes nearby, her breath a soft plume in the cold air. You reach out and run a hand over her neck, feeling the warmth beneath your fingers, the steady beat of life that carried you through hardship and danger alike. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, letting the night settle around you like a heavy cloak. The wind whispers through the grass, a gentle lullaby sung by the spirits of the steppe. You feel the weight of the journey lifting, replaced by a quiet calm. In this moment, you are not just a courier or a rider. You are part of something greater, an unbroken chain of men and horses, bound by duty, honor, and an unyielding code of manners. The road ahead is long, and the path uncertain, but you will ride it, as those before you did, guided by the silent rules that keep the empire alive. Slowly, the night deepens. Your eyelids grow heavy. The murmurs fade. The stars will silently overhead. And you rest, safe beneath the endless sky, held gently by the invisible hands of tradition and respect. The journey continues tomorrow. But for now, the road is still. The night deepens gently around you, a soft, velvety quiet settling over the endless steppe. The chill in the air no longer bites but wraps you in a cool embrace, like the gentle breath of ancient spirits watching over the riders who have traveled this road for centuries. You sit beside the dying embers of the fire, the mare resting peacefully at your side, her steady breathing a soothing rhythm against the vast silence. Your body aches from the miles, the long hours in the saddle, but your mind begins to soften, unspoiling the tight knots of tension that kept you alert all day. Each breath draws in the cold night air, crisp and pure, filling your lungs with the timeless essence of the land. The stars will overhead in their endless dance, distant yet intimate, like old friends who have seen every step of this journey before. You reflect quietly on the rituals, the bows, the greetings, the whispered blessings to horse and earth and man, that have guided your every move. These acts of respect were more than mere customs. They were the invisible threads that held together a sprawling empire, a network not just of roads and horses, but of trust and honor. The yam was not just a postal system, it was a living, breathing tradition that carried the heartbeat of a people across vast distances. As the fire's glow fades to embers, you feel the weight of the day lift, replaced by a serene calm. Tomorrow's ride waits, long and uncertain, but for now, you are suspended in a moment of peace. The soft sounds of the steppe, the rustle of grass, the distant call of a night bird, the mare's gentle munching, lull you closer to sleep. Slowly, your eyelids grow heavy. The world narrows to the steady cadence of breath and the whisper of the wind through the grass. The road you ride stretches on beyond the horizon, endless and patient, carrying the stories of all who have journeyed before. Rest now. The steppe watches, the stars keep vigil, and the ancient etiquette of horse and rider holds you safe. Sweet dreams.